Well, another day of global panic. And, I really, I'm not the kind of guy that subscribes to the hysteria. But the other day when we went and we saw the middle-aged women in their weird medieval grocery battles, I thought it struck me as odd. I woke up today after, kind of looking through my social media and just being like, wow, it's looking, I'm seeing all these empty aisles at grocery stores. I'm like, I should probably go buy some stuff. So I tell Karina, I'm like, Karina, we need to go shop. And she's like, why? You hate shopping. And I'm like, yeah, but, I don't want to be like the last guy that didn't believe the hype and then our family's resorting to cannibalism. She's like, oh, okay, we can go buy stuff. So we go, and I knew something was off right when we get to the first grocery store. We're in the parking lot, and LA Sheriff drives by. And it's like in an SUV or something. It's almost in slow motion. And they're bumping Tupac's To Live and Die in LA. And they are just straight grimacing at us, like, with that song, bumping. Their cops are bumping Tupac, To Live and Die in LA. An apocalyptic song. And I look at Karina, I'm like, that's not that chill. And she's like, you're just so paranoid. Like, I don't know, I think it's prison. It's not that big a deal. We'll be fine. I'm like, okay. So then we go into the grocery store. And, of course, the onesies again. The oxygen masks. The little surgical masks. That seems to be the Asian mask of choice. And the shelves probably are about 90% vacated. And that's not hyperbole. That's not an exaggeration. And the only stuff they have is like super bunk stuff. Like wheat flavored saltines. Or bacon flavored Ritz. Shit like that. And then Karina's like, oh my god, maybe you were right. Let's buy stuff. But there was not that much stuff to buy. Luckily, we did get some canned food. I made a separate video about it. I don't know. I put it on Patreon. I'll probably put it on YouTube as well. Karina still, once we left there and then we went to a 99-cent store. And everywhere we're going, we're seeing the same thing. It's just a really, scary dystopian feel. And I'm telling her, I'm like, honey, this could be the end. She's like, it's just, it's like typical white people panic. I think you're just overreacting. I'm like, yeah, no, you're right. There could just be some economic ripple effect and financial markets, as we know, could all collapse simultaneously. Free market just going right out the window. And then all of a sudden there's some sort of unified geopolitical takeover and a tyrannical body of government is formed and they're espousing totalitarian dictatorships and we become the peasants as the oligarchs get to sit there and get their buttholes sprayed by Evian bidets and we just are going to have perpetual itchy assholes. But yeah, you're right. It's not a big deal. And she's like, oh, yeah, it sounds whack. I'm like, yeah, it is whack. It's scary. So we end up buying about $500 worth of stuff. I feel pretty confident that that we're going to be okay. And another one of these openings, huh? I've been reading the Patreon comments, and it's a much nicer, class of people over there. People aren't trolling. People aren't just on the channel to just make fun of me. Like, man, I was a bad drug addict, but this dude is a straight loser. Look at this guy. What a bitch. I thought I was bad. This guy's a bitch. There goes my monetization. But anyway, the point is, it's just like a better community. It's like a like-minded community. And Monte Harris was I was commenting that. And so I've decided that on Patreon, I'm going to make a private chat room for people that subscribe to my channel. I'm going to host it, find some good premium platform. I mean, this is all, before the world ends, but that's a new thing that I'm going to start on Patreon. And please like, comment, subscribe, check out Patreon. There's something else. Oh, if you guys have social media, Twitter, Instagram, it's Ryan Leone 85. It's much easier for me to respond to stuff on Twitter or Instagram. Thank you. Let's get into the story. People are like, who cares? We just want to hear about just this train wreck of a life you're living at Lompoc, the federal pen that you were doing 3 months at, and you're the most hated person on the entire compound. So, where we had left off last time, I was in debt pretty bad, and there were some people that were crying, and eventually it was brought to the guy that was the shot caller for the entire yard. And coincidentally, around that same time, there was a kid named Weed. This is just, just to remind you guys of what happened. And Weed was there on a meth conspiracy case. I want to say he was doing like 50 years, maybe life. I'm not sure. And he had clean paperwork, but the theory was that the paperwork was doctored because he was on one of those like true crime shows where they were showing like drug kingpins, and it showed his case. And I guess he was tying up like this 14-year-old girl and like essentially molesting and raping her. And, that's something that's just awful. I mean, even convicts hate sex offenders. They hate sex offenders and rats. And they wanted him off. Now, they came to me as almost like a sacrificial thing. They're like, oh, because you're probably like, well, why would they come to you if they're trying to whack this dude? Why would they trust you if you're running up debts left and right? Well, I was kind of disposable. I was like a hybrid. I was like half scumbag, half solid. And they knew that. Like, it's not like I was a rat, and it's not like I had a bad reputation from other joints that I've been at. It was just that I was in there on, some epic drug run. And that does happen. I mean, people sometimes do have a certain cycle of money coming in, and then it gets cut off abruptly. And then they look like a piece of shit when it's really out of their control because you're having to rely on people in the free world. And they knew that I was doing a 90-day probation violation. Now, in the federal system, the way that it works, if you're doing anything over a year and a day, you do 87% of your time. 87? It's not 85. You get 54 days of good time a year. That's it. Do the math on that. So they say it's 85%, but it's 87, I think. 86 or 87. And you get that good time if you're a year and a day. Anything under a year, even 1 year, if it's less than 1 year and 1 day, you do 100% of your sentence. Now, there's state systems where that's called truth in sentencing. And it's what it is if you're doing a federal probation violation. So if you get 3 months, you're doing 3 months. The thing about that is that there's no good time to lose. So I can't get in trouble as far as them taking any good time because I don't have any to lose. So sometimes they turn people on short violations like me into a torpedo. Plus they knew that I put in work at Victorville, and that I'd gotten out, and I was somebody that would actually carry out a mission like this. And if I got caught, so what? They're mad at me anyway. So it was like a sacrificial thing. And although they were mad at me, they were still trying to set it up so that I couldn't get in trouble. Now, I asked them, I said, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to hit him with a lock in the sock? Do you want me to stab him with a knife? Is it Professor Plum in the laundry room with a fucking candlestick? I mean, what do you want? Now, if I get caught, if you're in state, if you're in county jail, and you get in trouble like this, they refer the case to the district attorney. There aren't any district attorneys in the federal system. There's U.S. attorneys, and then it gets referred to the FBI. Anything that happens at the Federal Bureau of Prisons gets referred to the FBI, and the FBI decides if they want to prosecute it or not. Sometimes they won't. I mean, sometimes they're really petty. Like, they'll find a roach of a joint, and they'll be like, oh, we're sending this to the FBI, and the FBI gets it, and they're like, what the fuck? We're stopping, like, narco-terrorists from chopping dudes' heads off, like, on border towns. We don't care about somebody getting caught with a roach with marijuana in federal prison. It's ridiculous. But violence is almost a sure way to get an ad charge, a new case out of it. So that was a real possibility. And again, I could have just checked in at this point. I could have just told the cops that I could have rolled it up, locked it up. And I'm not saying, I'm like not some guy of like, of all these principles and integrity. That's not why I didn't do it. I just, as I explained, I'd been schooled in prison. It was kind of a coming of age experience the first time that I was in there. And I just had it ingrained in my mind not to do that. You know, it's equatable to snitching or being a child molester, which is really not true. You know, there's plenty of bad calls in prison, and you see that all the time in the state system, especially. You know, we want you to go stab this guy when you have like 6 months to go, and now all of a sudden you're doing a life sentence, or you're doing 20 more years, whatever. So I mean, it's a very complicated issue, but they had already figured out how the hit was going to go down. They wanted me to stab him. They wanted me to stab him with a knife that someone had made out of a bunk bed. So it's one of the heavier kind. And those kind, really, they can kill you. Now, knowing me, I'm not like the toughest guy in the world. So, I mean, if I was going to do it, I was probably going to stab him like by not looking. You know, I'd like look away and just like poke him. You know? And they had planned it. And, you know, right after I had agreed to do it, you know, I went back to the unit, and a few guys came to my cell. Now, this guy Weed that I was supposed to whack is in the unit with me. Of course, no one's telling him that there's a hit being, you know, plotted against him or anything. They come to my cell, and they're like, okay, there's this girl, a female correctional officer that had just started working. She was a rookie. And it's always good to whack somebody in the joint when the CO's new. When the CO's new, it's more likely that you're going to get away with it. Now, they had cameras on each tier, and we were planning on doing it. I think it was a Monday or Tuesday, because it was on store day when I got approached to do it. And she was working the weekend shift. That's what rookies typically do, I believe. They start working, I think, in the hole, and then they work like the weekend shifts in the unit. So I had a few days before it was actually supposed to go down. And what they had told me is they're supplying the knife, and there's cameras on the second tier, because that was my first question. I'm like, well, what's up with the cameras? Where is this going to go down? Am I doing it in the chow hall? Are there cameras there? You know, I'm like fully committed to doing it. Again, I'm kind of in bondage to this prison ideology. You know, prison's an ideological breeding ground for xenophobia, homophobia, misogyny, sexism, racism, anti-authoritarian sentiment. And as much as I'm against those things, you know, a lot of stuff is ego based, you know, and like your ego is so compromised by this ideology that like I wasn't even thinking about I was just like, this is what I need to do so that they don't think, so that I'm not a piece of shit. And that's, you know, and I don't even consider myself impressionable. I wouldn't say that it's a result of that. I think it's, you know, I never had older brothers. My dad's not a rough guy. So, like I said, when I was coming up in prison, when I was growing up, I went to federal prison when I was 23. Spent 5 years in there. About 5 years. And I was much different when I walked out of federal prison when I was 27 or 28. I think I was 28. I was much different at 28 than I was at 23. And a lot of it was this false sense of pride and distorted sense of ego. I couldn't, under any circumstances, be labeled a piece of shit because I literally, like I said, I associated that as bad as being a sex offender, being a rat. And I hated those things. I mean, the reason I was in prison to begin with was because of me getting snitched on. Really, anytime I've caught a case, it's been because I've been told on. So I really hated that. And then sex offenders, it's just, who doesn't hate sex offenders? And if you don't, you should probably take a good look at why you don't, because that's bizarre, And so I had asked these questions because I'd surrendered to the idea. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I asked the question, okay, where's the blind spots? And so they wanted me to hit him in the cell, in the unit, while this rookie was working. There was cameras on the second tier at the end of this long, almost like just a row of cells. And then there's, a bar that runs in front of it. Just like what you would see in the movies. Lompoc is it's a quintessential old prison. And what the plan is I was going to go up the staircase, and I was going to have the knife on me. I was going to, there was a few people that were going to be waiting in a cell 3 cells away from that. And, we weren't hitting it. He lived on the bottom tier, but we were going to have him up on the second tier in some cell for some reason. I forget what it was, but they were going to lure him into the cell. I was going to go up the stairs. I was going to have the knife, and I was just going to go in there, and I was just going to, they said, put holes in him. And I was like, well, do you want me to kill him? And they said, just put holes in him. I guess he was well liked by people. And even though he was now a sex offender and everyone thought he was a complete piece of shit, it was more like, it's almost like an obligation in prison. It's like, we can't let a sex offender walk the yard like that. And, in state prison, I believe if something like that happens, it's kind of like on site. It's just like, you find out someone's a child molester or something, or they have a sex crime on their record, or they did something like this in the free world. It's like, you don't even think twice about it. You just act on it. But in feds, it's like a more sophisticated class of criminal, and they actually plan things out. They strategize. So it was like, how can we do this without getting caught? Because if you think about it, if he dies, anyone involved with it, even the guy that's the shot caller for the entire yard, it's a conspiracy to commit murder. That carries a life sentence. Not everyone there was doing a life sentence. So, we're very cautious. And I was supposed to go in the cell. I was going to stab him. And then I leave the cell. And as I'm doing it, there's a group walking down the tier to obstruct the camera view. They're walking on the hall, so you really can't tell what's going on. And while they're walking, they're almost making like a human wall for me. I do the hit, make some holes in him. I leave, and I bring the knife to another cell where there's a change of clothes. This is all happening on the second tier, and they get rid of the weapon. If you're in federal prison and you stab somebody or you hit somebody with a lock in the sock, for the FBI to prosecute you, it's almost impossible to if they don't recover the weapon. So, the whole point was to get rid of that weapon so that I couldn't get prosecuted and nobody could get prosecuted. And by doing this, at least my debts with the white guys were squashed. This didn't mean that, my shit with Diablo, the Wario-looking Southsider, that didn't mean that was over. And so, we planned it all out. We're sitting in my cell. It was felt like we were planning some sort of bank heist, but we're planning me possibly getting a life sentence in prison. And I was doing that to save my reputation when I had 2 months left. What an idiot. you know, and you see stuff like this happen all the time. So that's going on. And now I thought about it when, you know, I was like, well, where'd my commissary go from MDCLA? It took a while to get there, and I know what ultimately happened to it, but I couldn't remember on the chronology when you know, it was going to be there or not. I thought about it. I remember. So the next day, now I go to sleep that night, and I'd gotten morphine, but the morphine's not doing anything to me. At this point, it's almost placebo. You know, I'm just not really doing much to me. Morphine, 15 milligram morphine's not that strong. And I remember laying in my bunk and just thinking about everything. You know, thinking that my ex-wife might be pregnant, thinking about owing the Mexicans, thinking about what I had to do for the whites, you know, for the woods, for the wood pile, yeah. For what? You know, for some weird, skewed ego. You know, during this period, it was nearly impossible to sleep. Jamie had given me the stamps to pay Terry. The next day, you know, I wake up and people are just treating me differently. And, you know, like I said, I'm not getting good sleep, so I'm a little disoriented to begin with. And I go to breakfast. And now that they know that I've agreed to, like, carry out a hit. Now, we've talked about this so many times. I'm not a tough guy. I'm not now. I wasn't then. I certainly wasn't then. I was way less tough then than I am now. But I'm tougher than a lot of guys in prison because a lot of guys are truly faking the funk. You know, I really started seeing that on my third term when it was mixed with SMY and GP. I really started seeing, like, I just got disillusioned by the entire thing. I was like, whoa, this is what's going on? You know, we're basically just in bondage to these ridiculous political ideals. And, you know, I was willing to do it. A lot of guys aren't willing to do this. They might say, you know, a lot of guys bark. A lot of guys in California State Prison and in federal prisons in California in general are hiding behind their race. You know, they'll talk all crazy to a Southsider or to a black guy because they know that most rational other races aren't going to do anything. Well, that's not cool, man. That's some bullshit. You're doing bad business. Fuck you. Well, fuck you is kind of fighting words, but you know what I'm saying? Like, people dance around the edge of what they're allowed to say, and they hide behind their race. You know, in numbers, you have strength, but when it comes down to every man for yourself, that's why I loved Wisconsin. You know, it's like more, you know, it was just like, you know, every man for himself. It wasn't this like wolf pack mentality or this racial divide. And a lot of people hide behind this racial stuff. And it's all just bullshit. Now I look back and I'm like, whoa, you know, as much as I hate hot chicks and beer, you know, prison's just not that cool anymore. And it took me a long time to realize that. I don't think I thought it was cool, but I was still adherent to this political structure at that time. And I'm not now. I look at the whole thing, you know, and people like try to act like they're still convicts in the free world. Like, you know what, dog? I gotta talk to my big homie. I'm like, man, you sound so stupid. You sound so ignorant right now. Your big homie? You're 47, dude. You live with your fucking mom. Your mom's your big homie, dog. And that's how those people are. So that morning I go to breakfast and Jamie had given me the stamp, so I paid Terry, and everyone's being nice to me again because they know I'm down. Weed has no idea what's going on. You know, he's just talking to everyone, and everyone's just kind of looking at him like, ooh, and they can smell blood, like, ooh, we're gonna kill him. Well, you're not doing anything. You know, Leone's doing it. Tecato loco. That was never my name. That'd be cool though. And Terry's talking to me, and he's like, hey man, Kong was talking shit about you, man. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, he said you're a big fat fucking liar. I'm so mad right now about the entire situation. I'm like, what do you mean I'm a liar? And what he told me is that Kong was going around telling everyone that I was lying about the heroin. The 100 paper that he had given me, and I'd gone around and told everyone that it was bunk. Because he had given Terry that 50. A couple days later, I had done the 50, and then Terry had asked me how the heroin was, and I told him that it was awesome. I was like, that was real heroin. That stuff that Kong gave me was bullshit. And it was the same dope. Now, I think probably because I was doing Suboxone, with the whole one's a higher affinity than the other, and it makes it so your tolerance is messed up and you can't feel the opioid receptor stimulated the same that you would if you didn't have buprenorphine, all jizzed up in there. And I'm like, what do you mean? Now I'm sitting at the white table, and you got to understand, like, I'm not sitting at the cool kids table, but I'm like right in the middle. It's like the purgatory. It's like people that are okay. People with tribal tattoos, shit like that. And I'm like, what do you mean he called me a liar? He's like, yeah, man, he called you a big, fat, fucking liar. I'm like, are you serious? Fuck that. Now everyone's looking at me because they know that this hit's supposed to go down with weed. I'm like, fuck that. I'm going to go check that fool right now. I'm not going to let him get away with that. And then Tara's like, I knew you wouldn't. Just trying to instigate shit. Some old man. His face is so sun-weathered. He looks like the Freddy Krueger of inmates. I knew you wouldn't. It's like, man, wait till the free world sees you, bro. Go rent an apartment looking like that with your swastikas on your neck. And so I get up and I grab my tray. Now, Kong is sitting at another table. He's sitting at the table with the Mexicans. Now, the Southsiders, there weren't that many Southsiders at Lompoc. It was predominantly Paisa. And the Southsiders and the Paisas sat in the same section. I mean, just Mexican, period, sat in the same section at that place. And, there were no Norteños or anything there. So they're sitting there, and you're not supposed to, if you're a white guy, you're not supposed to go up to their table at all. Like, if you have something to say to them, say it at the yard. But I'm running off just pure anger at this point. I give zero fucks. I don't want to stab weed. I don't want to risk getting a life sentence over just because I made a couple dope fiend decisions in there and I need to save face. I'm not wanting to do that. I'm mad about my marriage. And then this piece of shit is calling me a liar. I'm not going to stand for it. Or maybe it was just the theatricality of it. Maybe I just was trying to look tougher than I was. Who knows why I did this? But I went up to the table and I slammed my tray down and I said, hey, dude. And he looks up at me. Now, remember, the guy doesn't speak English. I was like, can any of you guys translate to Kong right now? And someone's like, yeah, I can do it. And I'm sitting there. Now, all the Mexicans are looking at me. I look over at the white section, which is like right a couple tables like in front of me. And I'm sitting there across the table from Kong. Like, I literally like slam my tray down. And I start putting my finger in his face. And I said, like making sure to point and to have like very combative body language so that the white guys at the table saw that I was checking his ass. And I said, hey, leave my name out of your fucking mouth. And he's just looking at me like in shock. Because this guy is definitely not a bitch. This guy is pretty, he's like like I said, he's not, I don't know if he was a Southside. He didn't speak English. I heard he was 18th Street. And 18th Street sometimes has black guys in it, so I know they're like, I'm not sure. I've heard that those aren't even Soreños, but I know this guy was 18th Street, but he didn't speak English. So, I hear the other guy that's supposed to translate telling him, but the guy already Kong knows that I'm talking shit because of my body language, and I'm looking up, periodically I'm like just kind of glancing up and I'm looking at the whites and they're all looking at me. Like, damn, this dude is just going for it, you know. I think I was doing it to save face. I'm not sure, but he didn't do anything. He just looked at me as if he was in shock. Like he could not believe that I said that or that I did that. I was wagging my finger in his face. Like that, it doesn't get more disrespectful than that. And so what ends up happening is I just get up and I go and I you have to go and you have to go dump your tray. I go dump my tray and I just storm out of there. It's like an attention grabbing scene. And like I'm all revved up on momentum, on adrenaline momentum. I'm all revved up on adrenaline at this point. And, in the feds, you can do that. In state, they call you, like first row, and then like you have to line up. In feds, you can just eat and then leave and walk back to your housing unit. So I had done that, this was like first thing in the morning. And, I dumped my tray and then I just walked out. But I was able to get to leave before like a big group of people followed me. So I had like time to be by myself. I didn't know what I was doing. As soon as I left and the adrenaline began to subside to some degree, I knew that I had made a big mistake. I'm like, oh my God. If white people don't kill me, if I don't get busted killing a child molester or stabbing one, who knows what's going to happen now that I did that? There's no way that the Mexicans can be cool with what I just did. There's no way. Again, it's an ego thing. And some little white boy with a tattoo of a shark right here. Just check this like hardcore gang member. Nah, that shit's not going to fly. So I go back to my unit and I'm kind of tripping. I'm like, ooh, probably shouldn't have done that. Not the best thing that I did. And right as I walk into the unit, there's a lieutenant. Now, there's a few miscellaneous people that are going back to the unit right there. I don't know. He's probably like looking at the census count, seeing how many inmates are what the count is for the inmates in that unit, whatever he's doing. And I'm wearing these little blue suede shoes that they give you when you're doing transit, when you're moving, when you're on the federal prison bus or when you're on Con Air, they give you these blue canvas shoes. And like Vans makes them. I grew up skateboarding, so I always wore shoes like that anyway, and I liked them. They were like fashionable in there, even though none of this shit matters in prison. But you'd be surprised how much it does, and I think has to do with individuality. People just want to be individuals in there because you're essentially reduced to a number. So everyone wants to have their own little style. Whatever the case, I'm wearing these shoes. You're not allowed to have those shoes. Lieutenant sees me wearing these shoes. Now, you're probably like, well, you had the Nike Cortezes that Meech gave you. Why weren't you wearing those? Or, you had the Yard Dogs that the Chomo gave you. Why weren't you wearing those? Well, it's something that I would wear like if I was in the unit and I'd forgotten to take them off because you're not allowed to wear them and they trip if they see them. So the lieutenant is like doing something with a clipboard and he sees me in the blue suede shoes. And he's like, hey, come here. He's like, do you have your ID? Now, I had lost my ID. You're never supposed to not have your ID on you in prison. That's like how they can identify you. So it's like a big no, not to have your little federal BOP, like orange ID card. It's like, let me see your ID. And I was like, I don't know, I lost it. He's probably like cutting up lines of Wellbutrin and just left it somewhere or whatever. And he's like, what do you mean you don't have it? I'm like, I don't have it. I don't know what to tell you. And he's like, why are you wearing these bus shoes? Why are you wearing these bus shoes? And he looks like such an idiot. And I'm just like, now you got to remember what my mentality is. It's like, it still kind of was, running on adrenaline. And I'm like, why the fuck does it matter? And he's like, excuse me? I said, why the fuck does it matter? Why does it matter what shoes I wear? He's like, are you high right now? And I'm like, of course not. He's like, go take your shoes off and bring them to me now. I'm like, whatever. Now, like, you can talk shit to a cop. And this can also be perceived as a PC move. People do that all. That's another one. That's another very sophisticated dope fiend move. The old PC move where you owe a bunch of money and then you yell at a cop. You know, you just like you see someone go up to them. They're like, hey man, fuck you, you fucking pig. You better not take me to the hole. You better not take me away from all these guys I owe money to. You better not do that. Oh, what? Click. And I don't have to deal with it again. That's definitely not what I was doing. I was just in a bad mood anyway, you know, and I wasn't like saying fuck you to him. And just, what the fuck does it matter? Who cares what shoes I wear? Who cares? I'm doing a little violation. I'm going home in like 5 weeks. Who cares? So he makes me go to my cell, take the shoes off, bring them to him. So I bring them to him. He's like, thank you. And he takes my register number, you know, and I'm like, am I getting a shot for that? Which is like a disciplinary thing. Didn't matter. Like I said, I was going home, so he couldn't take good time. What he could take was commissary, which didn't matter because no one was sending me money anyway. My ex-wife. You are so selfish. Oh my God, I can't. Do you know how hard it is out here? You know how hard it is to be free and to watch, you know, be able to do whatever I want, and you're asking for money? You know, remember the $3,000 that I smuggled in worth of tobacco so that I could fucking help you pay your rent? No, that doesn't matter. I didn't even know what was going on with her. She's telling me she's pregnant. I didn't know what was going on. So this guy writes down my register number. I go back to my cell. As I'm sitting down, so I go and sit on my bed. And, you know, I'm wearing the Cortezes now. The guy had taken my blue suede shoes. Now I'm sitting on my bunk, and I'm like, really like, you know, I'm waiting for Lake to come in there to give me my morphine because there's pill call in the morning and there's pill call at night. I'm just kind of sitting there like with my hand in my head, just like, man, everything you're not supposed to do in prison, everything I learned in the first 5 years that I did, I'm doing wrong right now. Everything. Running up debts that I can't pay. Starting conflict with other races. Every single thing you're not supposed to do, I'm doing. I'm sitting there. Lake finally comes in. And he's like, dude. He's like, nobody really knows what you're doing right now. I was like, what do you mean? They're like, well, you think that's okay what you did in the chow hall? Dude, like, huge issues might ensue now. I'm like, how do you expect me to be? You know, Terry came and told me, he said I was a liar. It's like Terry does that to everybody. Terry gets amused by drama. He's some cranky old man. You look like a California raisin. You'd be cranky if you look like that too. And I'm like thinking, damn, Jamie, you look exactly like that guy. You look like 3 years younger than him, and you're probably 25 years younger than him. And as we're sitting there talking, you know, I'm asking him what he thinks I should do, what's going to happen. He's like, look, I have no idea, but Tommy's not happy. Everybody thinks you're trying to get out of what is going on. As we're talking, the CO comes in. He goes, Leone, you have to go to the lieutenant's office. I'm like, for what? He's like, I don't know. Probably you're about to get an incident report. You know, it's called a shot for, you know, disrespecting staff or whatever. I was like, great. You know, on top of everything, now I'm getting written up for the shoe thing. So I'm like, okay. So I walk out of there. Now I'm walking, the way that it works in Lompoc, the units, is you walk outside of the unit and like there's a little movie theater, like auditorium type thing. And there's more units. There's an east side. There's a west side. Everything's internal in there. And then there's a chow hall. There's an indoor gym and there's an outdoor gym as well. But you have to like walk through these long hallways with like this like shiny wax floors on them. And like, you know, it's just a very old prison. And I'm walking by myself down this corridor. Now, anything could happen to me. there. And I know that. Like, who knows what can happen? I could get jumped on by skinheads. I could get jumped on by the Mexican guys. I've infuriated so many people at this place. I am literally a walking target. And so I'm walking, and my workout partner just sees me. He's like, "What's up?" And I'm like, I don't know. I got called to the lieutenants. He's like, "Ooh." He's like, "Don't do it, Leone." I'm like, "Shut the fuck up, dude." I think I'm getting written up because I had bus shoes on. He's like, "Sounds good." I'm like, what's that supposed to mean? It's like, you heard me. I'm like, great, dude. I'm this guy at this place. I'm just a joke. Like, and I was going like from like being the piece of shit to being the cool guy. Like, I'm going to take out the chomo to like being the piece of shit again because I'm starting race wars over somebody calling me a liar, and he might not even call me a liar. This might have just been, invented bullshit by Terry. Somebody that just wants to instigate stuff because he's an old man that's like struggling with skin cancer or whatever. So I go to the, lieutenant's office thinking that I'm going there to get my incident report. And he's like, it's the same guy that I was just saying, why the fuck does it matter? And he's like, Leone, I need you to drop for me, which means drug test. And I'm like, man, I'm straight screwed on that. I have, who knows what I have? I know I definitely have morphine. I'd just done heroin, not saying that they could differentiate between the two, but I didn't know if the speed that I had was going to come up, and I'd smoked some herb. I didn't think it was enough to come up. Nominal amounts of weed won't come up in urine analysis tests. I learned that a long time ago. Now, I could do I had a few options here. I could refuse to test, which would automatically put me in the hole. It's kind of like a soft check-in move. I can do that, then I don't have to deal with all this drama. But everybody's going to say that it's a PC move. So I'm like, that's probably not a good idea. I can take the test. And I didn't know how it worked at this place. I'd gotten a dirty test at Oxford, and it had come up dirty right there and then, and they locked me up right there and then. Some prisons will test you, and if it comes up dirty, they wait for it to go to a lab and get confirmation that you are dirty before they lock you up for it. And Lompoc was one of those places. So, after kind of thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, I'll pee. And they watched me pee, and I peed in the cup. So now I know that I'm going to go to the hole. Maybe not right there and then, but I'm going to go eventually. Usually it takes about a week to get the test, week to 2 weeks. So I know that it's coming. And I'm standing there in his office, and all of a sudden they all start running out of the office, meaning something happened in another unit. The deuces got hit. Somebody had hit the walkie-talkie because there was duress at some area in the prison, and they just left me. I'm sitting in the lieutenant's office. They just seriously ran out of there and all started running away. And the only thing I could think of was there's a very, very, very good chance that whatever just happened may have happened between Mexicans and whites, because it didn't matter that, I was this moronic dope fiend. That's not how the Mexicans look at shit. I went to their table, I disrespected them, and they're not the kind of people that don't retaliate. We can get into what happens in that on the next episode. I'm not trying to do these ridiculous cliffhangers, but I do want to get this one out to you guys as soon as possible. Thank you. Like, comment, subscribe, dislike, leave bad comments. Who cares? Appreciate you guys, and I hope to see you again soon. Hopefully the world doesn't end. All right, Palabra.